Hello and welcome. My name is Jevgenij Rusakov and you're watching TVP World, interview from Vilnius. Debates about the unity and resilience of NATO have intensified amid growing geopolitical tensions and increasingly sharp rhetoric from Washington. Questions about trust, burden sharing and the future of transatlantic relations are once again at the center of attention. To discuss how vulnerable the alliance really is and what lies ahead, we are joined by Viktorija Čmilytė-Nielsen, Lithuanian MP and former Speaker of the Board of Lithuanian Parliament. Viktorija, thank you for joining us today. Glad to see you in our studio.
Glad to be here.
Viktorija, to begin with, how would you assess NATO's overall unity and resilience at the current moment?
Well, I would probably say two things that are somewhat separate but also connected. On a political level, NATO has seen better times, I would put it like this diplomatically. We clearly see that there is some disunity. It is quite connected to the fact that President Trump's administration is enjoying putting pressure on allies, at times even more than on adversaries. This is a style that has not been seen before so much, and of course it creates certain problems for allies and some unpredictability looking forward to the future, whatever it may hold. But there is also another level, which is a military level, military cooperation, cooperation on a more expert and technical level. And that, as far as I can judge as a member of National Security Committee of Lithuanian Parliament and having some experience in the field, that is going on well, not least because we are talking about people who are not just working but serving for many political terms and have seen different administrations come and go. So these things, these institutional things and corporations that go beyond a single democratic cycle, they are in place. And if anything, well, there are people who are strategically working to strengthen them. And if I have to see a silver lining in the present situation, I would say that Ukraine, despite the fact that it did not receive an invitation to become a NATO member anytime soon, but on an informal but a very practical level, it becomes an ever more important partner for NATO countries in different scenarios, in different situations, and actually not just NATO, but also beyond NATO, as we have seen in the case of the new war in in Iran and the countries of Gulf asking and from, as far as we can judge, receiving the help from Ukrainian drone operators and other experts. So I would say both worrying things, but also some silver linings in the present difficult and somewhat unpredictable situation. Okay, so
Finland's president, Alexander Stubb, has recently stated that the West has split, and we unfortunately must face this reality. So what do you think about that, and if this assessment is correct, what could be the long-term consequences for the West?
Well, obviously, unity is a huge strength of NATO and of other of our alliances. So disunity is a direct aim of the countries, of the forces, powers that are not friendly to democracies. So that must be said and understood. At the same time, within the West, there are some blocks of countries who are much more aware of, let's say, the danger of Russia's aggression and who are very keen and effective in helping Ukraine, and some which are less interested in that. And, well, of course, this trend of countries becoming more isolationist, looking inwards or at their most immediate neighborhoods and caring less about the big picture is a worrying trend from the point of view of smaller countries like Lithuania or, let's say, NATO Eastern flank countries. We, on the other hand, do have very good neighbors. And in our region, we have countries that are very single-minded.
We have a couple of them.
Yes,
yeah, let's
obviously.
name those names.
no, I mean, we have Poland, we have Latvia, we have Estonia, and we have the Nordic countries, and also Germany, which is also which is in the same bunch of countries that are very sensitive to the Russian threat, are also invested in being more resilient from it. So this, I would say that this group of countries is strong both in terms of investing in their own defense and security, but also showing an example of what needs to be done, and obviously also helping Ukraine to withstand, to keep resilient from the Russian aggression. So yes, our big aim is maintaining unity as much as we can. However, in the present situation where the administration of President Trump himself obviously sees things much more transactionally and much less in this kind of, you know, well, democracies stick together and do, you know, and do what's necessary kind of way. I mean, well, we have to find new ways. And to be honest, while there are some bleak scenarios, there are also some optimistic scenarios that we actually come out of this stronger. But it's extremely connected to the success of Ukraine.
Okay, my next question is just about those main beneficiaries of such disagreements inside NATO. One of them is Russia, as you mentioned, another one is China. And what conclusions do you think they draw when they see all this mess inside NATO?
Well, I think it would be natural to assume that they draw conclusions that it could be a good momentum to test the unity of NATO with some kind of hybrid threats and some kind of disruptions. And, well, as we know, disrupting is always somewhat easier than defending from disruptions, because you have, you know, you have all a big menu of the ugly and pleasant things that you can do to some countries. But on the other hand, on our side, we have also spent a long time you know, propping our resilience, defending from different kind of hybrid threats. So this is, you know, this is a tango between two sides that goes on for a long time and will in all likelihood continue. But, well, I would say that the timelines are also a factor. It's clear that Europe, even if slow, it's putting much more effort into its defense. Of course, we all want to do it quicker. We would, you know, we feel frustrated that things are not going as quickly as we would like them to. That also we are not learning from Ukrainian experience as efficiently and as quickly as we should, which is obvious. And therefore, we should make this window of opportunity for authoritarian regimes to test us as small as possible, and make sure that, well, we are resilient, and we send a very clear, unequivocal signal to our adversaries that no country in NATO or on NATO eastern flank would be an easy target for whatever disruption they might try.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's talk about Donald Trump. You've mentioned him already. So he has recently stated that NATO is a paper tiger without the US, and criticized allies for their lack of resolve. So what do these statements tell us about Washington's current approach to the alliance, and is this a form of pressure on NATO allies?
Well, I would say, first of all, obviously, the United States is a crucial, a very, very important member of NATO. And we don't want to think about NATO without the United States. You can call it by many names, but that's probably beside the point. I mean,
let's face the truth.
What we care about generally, I think, the NATO benefits a lot from having strong members, from having strong allies, and the United States being an unmatched military power in the world, obviously, is a crucial one. So that goes without saying. At the same time, the tactic of putting out a lot of conflicting views at times and putting, as I mentioned before, more pressure on your allies than on your adversaries, or at least those who are adversaries on paper, is one that creates distrust. And that, of course, hurts us because, well, it's a bit more difficult to trust a partner or an ally who has been bad-mouthing or bashing you or threatening, perhaps also, as we saw in case of Greenland or in case of Canada or in some other cases. So there is this kind of atmosphere of mistrust and unpredictability. And even having said that, in my opinion, that's my own judgment, that European allies and generally members of NATO, especially smaller countries, are still very willing and very dedicated both to the idea of NATO, but also being very pro-American, despite the fact that it is not always easy these days.
We have. Coming back to this rhetoric that we see from Washington, could this weaken trust amongst allies and, in long term, affect the US position in a potential confrontation with China?
Well, that, of course, that is possible. I think we don't even need to look so far away in time or, in some kind of possible situations, eventual situations, when we have a war right now happening, American war against Iran, where it also turns out that allies are useful and perhaps even necessary. Any war, apparently, it's easier to fight a war when you have good allies who have perhaps some things that
can fight a war sitting on the sofa.
That can, yes, that can add to your even very strong capabilities. But well, having said that, also it is very important for allies to be on board and to be part of the of at least understanding the strategic aims of one or another move. Obviously it's not a chess game. You cannot plan everything, but still you need to more or less understand the plan. And from what we can see, from what we can judge, the plan of that specific war is changing from day to day. And there are many, many aims, or only one aim, or sometimes these aims change. And in these circumstances, it is not so easy to react, especially for the, for the leaders of different countries who obviously are responsible and elected by their own electorate to follow that kind of lead, which is very tricky and sometimes unpredictable. So, yes, it's always easier to fight any kind of danger when you're united and when you can, when this unity is built not on fear, not on even material deals, but on trust and on values. And I have one hope that after this period of trying something else, that not just smaller countries, but also the big countries will come again to understanding that common values and trust is something that is the, well, the most precious currency.
The cornerstone.
Yes, the cornerstone, but that it's worth, you cannot count how many dollars it's worth, but it's worth actually really, really a lot.
Well, okay, but since you've mentioned chess, I have to say that if the whole situation would be a chess game, I think you would definitely master this one perfectly, wouldn't you?
Well, politics is much, much more tricky than a chess game, but we can still draw some parallels. And the main parallel is that it always benefits knowing the rules of the game, understanding them and sticking to them.
Nothing more to add. Let's see how the situation turns out. I really thank you for joining us today, and I really hope to see you once again in our studio.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to remind our viewers that our guest for today was Viktorija Čmilytė-Nielsen, Lithuanian MP and former Speaker of the Board of Lithuanian Parliament. You're watching TVP World. Stay with us.